Well, the amount of misinformation being spread in Brazil has spiked dramatically in recent years. There has been a rise of more than 1,600% in the number of complaints filed in court against online platforms compared to the 2020 local elections. Non-governmental organisation Global Witness says TikTok was the worst platform, with an investigation showing it approved 90% of disinformation ads. In Brazil, companies must remove problematic content within 60 minutes of an issue being reported, and if they don't comply, it can face fines of up to $28,000 per hour and also be blocked for up to 24 hours. Well, for more on this, I'm joined in the studio by Flora Rebelo-Arduini, campaign director at the organisation Some of Us, which monitors the influence of social media companies in Brazil's elections. Welcome to the News Hour. Firstly, this looks like it's rapidly turning into a very, very dirty online war. What shape or form does this misinformation take?
So yes, absolutely. We're seeing an increase of, disinformation and misinformation content being spread on the platform. The most concerning is that the platforms are actually allowing ads, so they're monetizing over content that it's straightforward disinformation, hate speech, and seeding distrust in the electoral system in Brazil. So a few examples of the research that we've been doing in Brazil is that ads that, for example, trying to sell weaponry so that Bolsonaro supporters can take to the streets. So we're also seeing, straightforward groups and profiles trying to get supporters to support a military coup in Brazil, and this is being openly found on all the platforms. Specifically, Meta, we can say, that has been also very, very lax in terms of actions being taken against this kind of content on their platforms.
As I mentioned there, TikTok was being accused of not doing enough to bring this under control. You mentioned Meta there as well. What do you expect from the tech companies?
So first of all, transparency. I guess if you ask across civil society, international and local civil societies in Brazil, one of the first demands is show us what you're doing, be transparent, talk to civil society, show the experts whatever you're doing, because it's not enough. One of the things that we asked several times for different platforms was, how many moderators do you have that speak Portuguese, that know the Brazilian context, so they're able to actually take action against disinformation, misinformation content? They just never respond. They just give us, very generic responses, which leaves us, civil society, to trying to do their jobs, which is not all right.
What more do we know about who is producing it, who funds it, where the network of support for all of this comes from?
So every time you start a research, you try to be as neutral as possible. You try to see what an average user will experience in the platforms. And we are seeing constantly that the far right in Brazil, namely Bolsonaro's electoral campaign, is one of the heads of the whole scheme. So we are calling their campaign a Stop the Steal 2.0 kind of a strategy. They're following the playbook that Trump has put in place in the 2020 elections, and they're basically doing the same, right? There is a lot of money involved. As I mentioned, they boost ads on the platforms, but they also have several influencers across TikTok, for example. It's a great example of influencers putting distrust in the electoral system and calling for military coups. And all this kind of content that it's even illegal according to the Brazilian law. You
mentioned the US elections there in 2020, where we saw that the cumulative, I suppose, result of all of this was an assault on the democratic process itself. Do you get the impression that steps are being made to already contest the results of this election and that this is all part of it?
Absolutely. But Bolsonaro has been pretty straightforward for years, for months now ahead of the election, and this week in particular, his speech speaks directly in challenging the electoral results in Brazil. The distrust that he's been spewing for the past few weeks, it's absurd. The electronic ballots in Brazil, the electronic ballots can give you the full results within hours, and he's already challenging the results before even the vote happening. In trying to pave the way in case he loses, he will try again to put a kind of like a third ballot, sort of like what Trump did on January the 6th.
This is shaping up to be an incredibly bitterly contested election. Flora Rebelo-Arduini from Some of Us, campaigns director. Thanks so much for joining us on the News Hour.